felt like you are the only one who's keeping your jobs from falling apart? Managing multiple projects is tough. Getting stuck in constant firefighting, running from site to site, solving problems all day long happens all too often to good contractors. But it doesn't have to be that way. I've helped dozens of general contractors go from stressed out to in control, some doubling their profits and finally taking some real time off by installing these exact systems that I'm be sharing with you today. So I'm going to be walking you through the 7 essential project management systems every contractor needs to simplify operations, avoid costly mistakes, and finally step back from the day to day. I was talking with a very successful project manager the other day who had managed, $1 million projects, multi-million dollar projects, and we quickly realized and came to the conclusion that communication is the number one most important differentiator in project management. I'm going through all these different systems that are super important, but in the end, your ability to communicate is what's going to differentiate you and produce a successful project. And the first and biggest one is team communication. So, what's the system for team communication? You're going to need a dedicated app, some sort of channel in order where all of the communication for that project happens internally. So there's a difference between external to the client communication and internal communication. So if you are the project manager or you have project managers, and then you've got a designer, you may have your site guys, whoever it may need, you should have one dedicated group or channel for a specific project so that everything is contained in that. You also want to be providing weekly updates. So if you've got site foreman or superintendent, you've got a project manager, maybe yourself as the business owner or general manager, depending on the size of your business, there should be at least a weekly update to senior management or yourself as the owner of the business from your site guys or project management team so that there's always a pulse of what's going on this week, what's going on next week. And then any critical, site meetings need to happen for sure with inside the internal team before you have the client meetings. So this could be, pre-board before drywall goes on or framing inspections, foundation inspections. Those critical points, punch list at the end of the project finishing have to happen. And I'm telling you, like what you need to implement in your business. Everything I'm mentioning though needs to have some sort of consistency. So it's not just, oh, we have to have better site meetings. Which site meetings, at which times, what is the standard so that there's always a protocol, there's a process that each of these, team communication is essentially in some sort of an SOP or documentation. Also, if you find communication is lacking inside your team, it could be a training and just explicitly communicating things from yourself or your project managers to telling them, hey, this is how we communicate on a project. This is what I want to know. And then any pertinent info and documentation needs to happen with those site meetings or that weekly update. All right, the second big system for project management is document management. So managing all the files, the photos, the documents, everything. How do we keep organized? How do we keep it specific? What I've used effectively and find that works the best is you're going to need some sort of cloud-based system. I like Google Drive. I think it works great. It works on your phone, your tablet, your computer. Everyone can access it. You can share it with different people, and it's quite streamlined and easy to use for everybody. If you have a specific project management software, you can also use that. But I find project management software often you can't edit documents very well inside it, so you got to download it and upload it again, and it's just a little bit clunky compared to like a Google Drive or something like that. But if your project management software works well, you just have to choose what is your standard for the company and make sure everybody knows that this is how to do it. And essentially, you want to have easy access to it. So make sure it's shared with the appropriate people. It could be your client, could be project managers, designers, trades, your site guys, whoever it is. They can access the documents they need to make sure that they've got the plans, they've got the selections, whatever it can be, so that your document management is at a very high level. All right, system number 3 for project management, something that I didn't do much of when I first started general contracting, and I think everybody knows they need it, and that is schedules. And it may seem like, we've got a schedule even, but having a detailed schedule is quite easy once you have good templates. So the first thing you want to do is get a template for a big project, whatever a big project is for you, whether that's full home remodel, home, maybe a skyrise, a building, whatever it is. But one of your biggest projects that you do, create a schedule for that because it's very easy to pare it down and make, subsequent templates from that schedule. Things that you want to be incorporating into your schedule is ordering. So when do materials need to be ordered? If you've got cabinets going in, 3 months down the road, then you need to be ordering maybe a month and a half or more, depending on the delay of your millwork supplier. So things like ordering should be tied to specific parts of items in the schedule, as well as having buffers. So how many times have you had, your plumber is there and then the electrician shows up and it's just a mess and everyone's, throwing hammers and getting pissed off and that guy's messy and they're not supposed to be here and now they're all working around each other. So put a day or two buffer in between critical trades, in between critical inspections. Hopefully inspection passes and you just roll into the next phase, but often there's something to be fixed. And I have almost never found it to be the case where someone's like, oh, we had too many buffers, or I wish I would have had a shorter schedule, right? Inevitably, schedules and timelines tend to bloom and like balloon in construction. So have a couple buffers in there, be safe. You don't want to like make extravagant, multi-week kind of buffers or anything like that, but have a little bit of extra time in there. Other things you want to have in your schedule is critical meetings. So I mentioned that earlier about internal meetings as well as external meetings with the clients. And then for the clients, I like to share the schedule with them, but share phases. So instead of showing them framing, electrical, plumbing, all that stuff. There might be like a foundation and framing phase. And then there might be a rough in phase and then, finishing phase so that they can kind of see the big chunks of a project and how one moves into the next. But they're not, on your ass if you're out, a day or two because one trade didn't show up or something happened with an inspection, right? So that's how I like to manage clients and the schedule from their viewpoint. All right, moving on. System number 4 here is client communication. So your team is communicating well. Now you need to get your clients communicated well. And fielding client communication can be very stressful if you're not doing it proactively. Clients calling, wondering what's going on. Why does this look like this? What's happening? Nobody's on site. All these different things, right? So the way that you want to set this up is have weekly updates go out from the project manager to the client. I like Fridays, but anytime during the week does work. And in the update email, it should have what happened, this week. So we got drywall installed and the guys started taping. Next week we're sanding and, finishing boarding or whatever, right? So always say what's happened this week, what's happening next week. It gives them a little bit of a continuation and then pertinent notes, anything specific like you need a decision made or something came up. It's not like a huge issue that you necessarily need to like call them and tell them about, but something like, hey, we had an ordering delay. This thing's going to be a little bit late. It's not going to affect the schedule to any large degree, whatever, right? So send that email out to them every week. Provide a dashboard for clients. This one takes a little bit of tech to set up, and you're going to need some sort of project management software typically, but it should have kind of the schedule, possibly the financial information, depending how open book you are, if you're doing cost plus or what have you. But at the very least, it should have a couple of links that they can contact you, who's running their project, the schedule, photos possibly, and their access to plans and files or whatever other kind of links that they may need so that they don't have to call you or your people to find out information, right? They can go to the dashboard, they can figure out what's going on, everything's good. The other document that you need for clients is the selection sheet. Or if your project management software has it, give them access to the selection so that they know exactly what's going on. Which countertops have we picked? What decisions do they need to make? So if they haven't picked their tile yet, they should be able to go see that and realize that, oh, we got to go pick tile, right? Ideally, you've got a designer or there's a designer helping them with all these, but that information is critical for client communication because you guys, your trades, whoever needs to know what the client selected, and the client needs to also be able to verify that what they've chosen is actually there and they're not saying later, oh, I wanted something else. Well, if it's verified in the selection sheet, then at least you've got some sort of way to say, well, it's going to cost extra or it may take longer, whatever it may be. Next is training and protocol. I've had this happen before where I had one of my guys show up to someone's house and didn't really introduce himself well, but it was obvious that he was working for me. Went inside, went and used the washroom, and it was kind of messy. And I got a call from the client later, and they're just like, heads up, like, I don't know, this guy just kind of came into my house, used our washroom, made a stink, and didn't really tell me what was happening and just started working in my kitchen. We were doing a remodel at the time. So, wasn't super upset. Luckily, a nice client. But that said, not very professional. And I had to have, a conversation with that employee to say, like, hey, you know what? If you're showing up for a house the first time, you haven't met the client yet, make sure you knock on the door, introduce yourself, ask them if it's okay to use the washroom. Typically, we do that in our what to expect, anyways, when we talk with the client. But still, make sure that you are telling your employees, your project managers, whoever may be, what is appropriate for talking with clients. If clients ask you some sort of difficult questions, how do you respond? Who do you tell them to talk to? All those types of things. It needs to be explicit and they need to be trained on it. And finally, the thing with client communication, the training that also needs to happen, especially for project managers, is tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. You have to be open with clients for them to trust you and respect you. You don't have to share every little detail. And yes, you're going to frame it in a way that doesn't, get them having a heart attack or super upset or, blatantly or bluntly just telling them that, it's their old house and they've got an issue about it. But at the same time, if there is something that comes up, tell them about it. And if it's something good, like, hey, we're on schedule, or hey, the cabinets just showed up, hey, the tile just went in the back, backsplash or in the shower and it looks great, call the client, send a little video to them. If every time you call a client, it's something bad, it's not a good relationship and they're going to start to expect that and it's just going to create tension. So make sure you're giving them a lot of good stuff and a lot of good communication so that when that odd bad thing does happen, you've built up this, well or bank of like good stuff that you've done as a company so that the few things that don't go so well can kind of get smoothed over. Making sense? All right, moving on to number 5. And this one is a huge differentiator. I had a client who we implemented this quality control system and he ended up on our next call we talked and I said, how's the quality control checklist that we put into place? He said, I couldn't believe it. I called my project manager. We just closed out a project. Usually it's about a 2-week process to finish off a punch list and get it ready for the client. I called him. It was like 3 4 days after we created the punch list, he's like, "Yeah, we're done. We're complete. The client can move in next week ahead of schedule." And it's just like, wow, that's awesome, right? Just because they followed a good quality control checklist throughout the project, so when they get to the end of the project, there's not this laundry list of things like little touch ups and this and that to complete at the end of the project. So the thing with quality control is it has to start before the project even gets started. So have a checklist of site setup. So what needs to happen when the guys set up for site? Materials ordered, fencing, safety stuff, ram board down, site signage, safety tote box, whatever it is, have that checklist so that even before the project starts, you've got all your ducks in a row. You can move into the project. Then, of course, things like framing, foundation, rough-ins, finishing, drywall, whatever. You're going to have these certain control points where you want to have a checklist of things that your project manager is going to go through, and they're going to list off everything that's not up to high standard, and they're going to make sure that trade gets back or at least communicate with the trade that there's something to be fixed the next time they return. This way, you fix things when they happen, and it just makes everything run so much more effectively, and it lets people know that sloppy work or letting things slide is not the way that your company runs. Things need to be done. They need to be done timely. And the whole reason is so that you can turn over the project quickly to the client when it gets down to the end of the road. And then the final thing for quality control is on the client dashboard, make sure that you have an issue submission form or something that the client can use to raise issues. This is another way to increase communication. They can express themselves 24/7, but tell them, don't give me a call if something looks out of place. Like if it's drastic or emergency, then, yes, okay. But if it's small little things, please take a picture of it, submit the form. It'll go into our list of things to deal with, and we will make sure to address your issue. If we need more information from you or we need clarification, we will call you, right? This isn't that you don't want to have communication with the client, but it gets them out of the like reaction mode, and you are out of the reaction mode, and your project managers that the client, you don't have to jump to every little thing the client wants or needs fixed, that they can raise an issue, it'll get cataloged, and you guys will get to it, in a timely manner. All right, number 6. This will make or break a project and a business, and that is financial tracking. Let me ask you a question. Do you know how much expenses and profit you're making per project? And then do you know by line item or cost code category how much you're over or under compared to what's budgeted in your estimate to what actually gets produced or expensed on site? Few contractors get to this level or get really efficient at this level. And I know this is like the simple, how to simplify your business. This isn't necessarily the simple systems to set up, but once they are set up, it will simplify your business because you know exactly where you're at on every project by line item, and it'll cycle into bigger and bigger profits and just a better run business overall. As far as financial tracking, there's 2 different types of tracking that need to get done. One is the expenses for materials and supplies, all that kind of stuff. The second one is your personnel. So subtrades usually kind of easy to track more or less. They give you a bid and then it gets, you pay them essentially for completing the project. There might be a little change order variance here and there, but the hour tracking of your guys. So those are the big ones. And it should be able to track every expense, whether it's for material or for labor hours, by project and by task type or cost code category. There is a lot of apps and software, project management software, that pretty much all have this built in. It's just a matter of setting it up and wrapping your head around it. Again, this is not the easiest thing to get working, especially when you're tying it into your accounting, bookkeeping software. But I call it the holy grail of construction companies because it will keep you alive. Good times, bad times, you'll always know where you stand, and you'll be able to look forward and create this ever, virtuous loop of better profits and stronger budgeting and estimating. So critically important to have that in your project management, that the budgets can be seen in a nearly real-time basis within maybe 1 week delay on every project as it's ongoing. All right, now we're on to number 7, system number 7. Last but definitely not least, this is actually the most important kind of function to tie everything together that I've mentioned so far. So I've tried to make things as simple as possible with the top 6 there. Number 7 is the one that ties everything together and enables you to actually implement all of this in your business in a consistent way, and that is a project management standard operating procedure. So you need one document for all the systems I mentioned. There should be one document that contains all of those systems and the operating procedure of what a project manager or site manager needs to know, laying out the process, links, checklists. My quality control checklist that I have for all the project management is in the project management SOP. This is like the set in stone way that you run your business. This is where the templated checklists are. You'll take those checklists, you'll put them in the project management software or in your task tracking software, print them out, whatever it may be, to get them to site. But the kind of master copy is in your standard operating procedure. You also have training in there to a degree of what they need to do, but also links to training videos or maybe a link to a workflow or pictures of workflows. I like to have a workflow in my SOP so that they can see the big critical path of like, this is how a construction project runs. This is how the site setup runs. These are the decisions that need to be made. Some people learn visually, and trying to read this large SOP, it's good when you got to go pinpoint or know exactly the process, and they may go through it when they're training and stuff like that. But having videos and workflows really helps cement that information, and also provide like quick references that they don't need to go read through a bunch of stuff if they can just, quickly kind of jump through a video or see a workflow. So those are the big seven. Now that you know how to build world-class project management systems, you may be thinking of hiring a project manager or maybe hiring more project managers because now you know how. But before you do that, go check out this next video here on what to do before you hire your next project manager.